Well, good morning, Golden Corner Church again. How are you? Good. That worship was good. Y'all were worshiping this morning. That moved me. I want to start off, before I get started this morning, I want to acknowledge a couple things, a couple people. First off, I'd like to thank Danny and Karen Pelfrey for all the work. As you might have noticed as you came in, the building looked a lot different. We had all of that stuff planned. What you don't know is, and then amongst that, we had sprinkler heads during that freezing weather that kept spitting air and some water. And so we are very thankful to them and the work they did. If you don't mind, give them a round of applause. They came up here a lot. I'm going to be honest with you guys, it was a little touch and go there for a little while, what was going to happen in here. And we're very thankful for them for the work and their crews and everything that made all that happen, but also for keeping this building from flooding. We're going to thank God for that too, because I think He deserves some credit that this building didn't end up full of water. Yeah. So, anyway, we're very thankful for that. Here we sit, January 8th, 2023. Are you ready to get going? I'm excited. I'm fired up. It gets dangerous when I'm this way. You know how it goes. I'm excited to kick off a new series with you guys, but before I do, I need to ask you a few questions. Have you made any New Year's resolutions? Some of you are like, it's the 8th, Tim. Those are gone. Those are done. I've already lost that battle. You know what I mean? Anybody made any New Year's resolutions? Hey, look, I got my man right here. Look, he ain't scared. Anybody else? Now see, I knew this was going to happen because it's kind of become this thing that you scoff at. It's like, New Year's resolutions, New Year, same me, I know it's become that. But I want you to know, I think New Year's resolutions are good. I think pausing at any point and reflecting on your life and looking and saying, I would like for this to be better, or I would like to change this, or I would like to accomplish this, I think it's a good thing. So, I know that some of you have done that. You just are refusing to call it a New Year's resolution because you don't want me to use you as an example. I know that each one of you, there's this innate thing that happens to us where the new year begins, you're like, well, I'd like to do this year. And I'd like to go over here. So let me rephrase the questions. Are you using the new calendar year as an opportunity to readjust or to address parts or pieces of your life that you're wanting to change, you're wanting to alter, you're wanting to make better? Any of you doing that? Yes. Oh, everybody's doing that. Okay, great. We're just not calling them New Year's resolutions. So let me ask you this. So you've made some commitments. You're trying some things. Have you made any commitments that you're willing to share with me and allow me to share with the world? They won't see your face, though. Anything, just tell me something. Anybody got a commitment that you're making for 2023 that's on your mind? Go ahead. Reduce debt. I love that. Financial. Go ahead. Read the Bible more. I guess we know who the holy people are. Okay. Hey, I love you. You're right. Go ahead. Just shout them out. You can shout them. Go ahead. What is it? Pray more. I got it. We're in church. I get it. Okay. Anything else? That's good. Drink more water. Listen, simple, good. I like it. Anything else? Learn how to play the guitar. A little goal. Wanting to learn something new. Don't you love that? Yell them. Exercise. Hike more. See there? Fitness. Praise Him more. Fish more. Yes! I knew if I stuck with it long enough, somebody'd be honest. I knew that it could happen. Let me explain. Typically, that is what you're going to see. That's the things that we begin to think about. When we look at our life, perhaps we think about our health. Perhaps we think about losing weight, maybe, or exercising more, or just being generally healthier, focusing more on our nutrition. Maybe it is about your relationship with God. Maybe it has something to do with prayer, or getting more in the Word, or spending more time with Him. Perhaps it's relational, and it has to do with you and your spouse, and you want to spend more time together. You want to slow down. You want to, just be together more, doing fun things together. Perhaps it's about parenting, and you want to spend more time with your kids. You want to accomplish some things as a parent. Maybe you want to change something about the way you parent. Perhaps it is financial. Maybe it is about saving money or making more money, managing your money better. Maybe you own your own business. You want to grow your business. You're setting some business goals. I know people that do that. Maybe it's something fun. Maybe it is something leisure. Maybe it is about going on a big adventure, planning an adventure with your family and going on some great trek across the country or something. Perhaps it's a project that's just been hanging over your head for years and you want to try to tackle it. Maybe it's a habit, a bad habit, or an addiction that you're looking to break. Does this all sound familiar? So I know none of you made New Year's resolutions, but you're all wanting to tackle some of this stuff, right? Maybe it's about rebuilding something that's broken down. Maybe it is about being successful at something or learning something new. I want y'all to know something about me. I love it. I love setting goals. I love looking ahead at life. I love pausing and sitting on the edge of my bed and asking myself, I heard a guy say this a while back, what am I not doing well? What am I not doing as good as I can possibly do it? And then trying to figure out how do I accomplish that. I love everything about goal setting, resolution making, life-changing stuff. I love everything about it. So I hope that each one of you in some way is doing that. Y'all may not know this about me, but currently I live a pretty disciplined life. This is what I mean. I treat the energy I expend and the time that I expend in life, I treat it very diligently. I try to be very disciplined in how I use it. For instance, some time ago, I simplified my life to 4 things. I'm going to give you all a little insight into me, okay? Y'all okay with that? I simplified my life to 4 things. There are 4 things that I want to be. I want to be, number 1, a man of God. Now, there's a lot that's entailed in that, but that's what I want to be. That's one of the goals of my life is I want to be a man of God. The second thing is I want to be an incredible husband. I want to be an incredible husband to Brittany. Number 3, I want to be an amazing father. And number 4, I want to be an unbelievable outdoorsman. It's true. I'm sorry. That's my 4 goals. I say unbelievable. I want to be a successful outdoorsman. And this is really what I want you to understand. I try to avoid doing things that don't lead to those 4 things. And I try to make sure that I'm doing things that take me to those 4 things. So when I'm looking at my life, when I'm looking at how I expend my energy and how I spend my time, I am very disciplined to make sure that everything that I do in some way leads to those 4 things because that's my big 4. Now, I did that because I needed to. And I'm hyper-focused on it. And Brittany and I are very goal-oriented people. We love to talk about what we're doing and what our plans are for the year. And we're kind of fanatical about it to the point that just recently we had a long trip to see a family member. And Brittany was like, bring the pad, bring the pen, let's sit down and talk. And so we literally, on the whole trip, I sat there and I wrote out her goals, wrote out my goals. We talked about them, things we wanted to do, and even began to write out a schedule. Monday through Friday, every hour. Yeah, we're freaks, y'all. We really did. It was like, what time are we getting up? We're getting up at 4 a.m., okay? What time, and I mean, we just started each hour. What time do we have to get the kids up? Who's picking the kids up on this day? And everything was in there that you would think would be in there. We talked about exercise, and we talked about our time with God. We talked about private time, like time that she would get to have to herself, time that I would get to have to myself. We talked about time that we were going to have together. And we talked about all of our goals as they fit in our schedule. And I tell you this, I hope we stick with it. And I'll tell you, year in and year out, especially over the last few, I can tell you that we're getting better and better at sticking. We're honing this thing in to reach the places that we would like to be, to do the things that we would like to do. But as we were driving down the road that day and I was writing in our little book, I thought back to 2018. Now, what's significant about 2018? Anybody know? It was before 2019. That's right. Good job, Ernie. In 2018, I was in a much different place. And this is going to probably surprise some of you. In 2018, I was probably in the darkest place I'd ever been in my life. Just to start with, just surface level, I was the most unhealthy I'd ever been. I weighed the most I'd ever weighed. I was eating terrible. Whenever I wanted to, I ate my feelings. Any stress I felt, I just ate them. Mostly hot wings and French fries and cheeseburgers. But I felt terrible. I had developed something called sleep apnea and had for a year or so. And I know some of you probably deal with sleep apnea, but my sleep apnea was brought on by my weight. And sleep apnea is where you stop breathing while you're sleeping. And it's not good for your heart. It's terrible for your health. And I went and had sleep studies done, went to doctors. I mean, I was having just a difficult time, feeling terrible, felt terrible every day. Went to the doctor, and they actually told me that I stopped breathing 57 times an hour. Yeah, I know, it's pretty bad. Thanks. 57 times an hour. I was stopping breathing almost every minute of an hour I was asleep. So I woke up, and I felt absolutely terrible. I felt like I had been hit by a truck. I felt like I was never rested. I had headaches, and I had all sorts of other health things that were going on because of this. And as you know, or you may know, that sleep apnea, their treatment for it is you wear a CPAP, which is a machine that they hook to you, and it literally pushes air into your body overnight. So hang on a second. I was 33 years old, had 2 kids, little kids, that thought their dad hung the moon, and they would come running into the room. And here I was with a mask on, having a sleep. Had a beautiful wife laying next to me. Looks over. I've got this mask on, you know. Now, I'm not making fun of it. I want you to understand. I understand. I want to tell you something. That CPAP helped me. It helped me. But I was so unhappy in it. I felt so bad about it because I knew what caused mine. I knew what was doing that. I told you guys I had 2 kids. Ren was about a year old. Andy was stroking around 4 years old around then. And if you didn't know Andy when she was 4, she was going through her terrible 4s. Whatever, 3s and 4s. No, I'm just kidding. She knows I'm just messing with her. She was wild. Life was happening to us so fast. And if I'm being honest, I didn't feel like we were managing our kids very well. I caught myself being snappy more than I care to admit. If I had to say it in one way, this is what I say. I knew I wasn't being the father I could be. Just to them. I knew that I wasn't being as good a dad. I found myself in a really low place. And as if we weren't managing, I don't feel like Brittany and I were managing them very well together, but I'm going to be honest, we wasn't managing ourselves very well. I wouldn't say that my marriage was falling apart or anything like that. I would tell you this, Brittany and I were struggling. We were struggling. Really struggling. I felt like she was unhappy with the way we were living. I was unhappy. And if I had to put a finger on why, I think it was just as much busyness. We were letting life happen to us, one demand after the next, and we weren't making wise choices for how we were spending our times and things that we were doing. We were crazy busy, and we just weren't managing the stress of all of it very well. Worst of all, the part that hurts me the most to say is my relationship with God was non-existent in 2018. I know some of you just thought, but Tim, you were here in 2018. Yeah, I was. Talking about my personal relationship with God, it was non-existent. If I had to give you a stat, this is what I would say. I bet you from sometime in 2017 through 2018, I bet you I did not have a legitimate, significant quiet time once a week. Y'all okay with me saying that? Y'all don't want to fire me? Good. All right. I did. Physically, I was failing. Mentally, I was a wreck. Emotionally, I was shutting down. I was getting home, sitting over in a corner, quiet, ill, all those things. Spiritually, I was in the ditch. And between us, just you and me, Rhonda, and whoever else watches this video, on YouTube for the next 100 years, I was faking it to a great degree. So if y'all ever wonder whether I can fake it, I can. And I know you can too. But I hope you're wondering, well, Tim, how did you go from there to where you are now? Because I just told you how disciplined I was and how goal-oriented and how Brittany and I handle our life and how focused we try to be. And I hope that you're wondering, Tim, how in the world did you go from 2018 to here? First off, I had a moment of realization. End of 2018, Ronnie Hodge did what he always does. Ronnie Hodge comes, we start having meetings, planning the next year. He's a huge goal guy. If y'all don't know him, he writes in his books like crazy. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's my schedule. Here's my things. And so Ronnie pulls me into a meeting. We're having a meeting and we're talking. And Ronnie is sitting there and he's like, man, next year, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. And just as a part of that conversation, for the first time, Ronnie really looked at me and he said, Tim, do you feel like God is leading you to be the next senior pastor of this church? Because I do. Do you feel like you're ready for that? And I want to tell you something. This twist happened in my gut. I got sick. And I went, no. And I could tell it kind of shocked him. He was like, I said, no, I don't think so, man. I don't know. I don't know if I see myself in that role. And I hem-hawed around and I gave him all sorts of stuff. But here's what really happened. In my mind, I thought, in no way am I living the way that I should live. To be handed that responsibility. I knew that I wasn't being the man of God that God had called me to be. I knew I wasn't taking my relationship with Him as seriously as I could. And I knew that I wasn't leading my family the way that I should be leading my family. And if I'm not leading my family and I'm not following God, then how in the world could I possibly ever expect a church full of people to follow me? To trust me. So I walked out of Ronnie's office, and I'll never forget it. I was sick, and I was busted up about it, for lack of a better way to say it. And what followed was a lot of introspection. What followed was a lot of looking at my life, looking at the way I was living my life, looking at the things that I was doing, thinking about my relationships, my focus, my habits, my attitude, my schedule. And I'm going to be honest with you, there was a lot of prayer that happened where I was asking God to forgive me for what had happened and asking God to show me the way to change all of that. That's what happened. And in January of 2019, I made some resolutions that y'all hate so much. I made some commitments. And I began to change that narrative. So, starting this year, 2023, I'd like to help you with some of your resolutions if you have them, your goals, your commitments, the things that you would like to see different this year. I'd like to help you see what I saw. Are y'all interested in that? Y'all are interested in that. Good. I want to share with you what I believe are the keys to unlocking the potential of today, of tomorrow, and of 2023 and beyond. In order to do that, though, guess what I got to do? I get to tell you a story. If you want to follow along in this story, you can turn to 1 Samuel chapter 17. It's one of my favorite stories of all time. We're going to be in this story for just a few weeks. This story centers around a young man named David. Now, David at this time is somewhere in his early teens. He's 13, 14 years old. And the Bible describes David as ruddy, with beautiful eyes and a handsome appearance. Can anyone tell me what ruddy means? Red, thank you. I didn't know what it meant. When I read it, I was like, what does it mean, ruddy? When you look at ruddy, what it means is with red tint or red complexion. So either David was a red-headed guy with rosy cheeks, or maybe he was reddened by the sun because of what he did for a living. Does anybody remember what he did? He was a shepherd. That's exactly right. David was a shepherd. He tended the sheep of his father, a man named Jesse. So day in, day out, David cared for his father's sheep. That's what he did. He was the youngest son of Jesse. He was the lowest man on the totem pole as far as status goes, but we're repeatedly told in 1 Samuel that there was greatness flowing inside David's heart. There was greatness flowing inside him, and I believe there's greatness flowing in each one of you just the same way. Listen to this. It was going to be realized. Let me make sure you understand the way the world was at this time, what was going on in David's world. David's world was not in the best condition. The people of Israel were in what one commentary described as in a long drift from God. Meaning the people of Israel, they had stopped worshiping, they had stopped doing some things. They were just slowly drifting away from God, not giving Him a lot of focus and attention. That sound familiar? The people of Israel had gotten so far away from God, they were like, listen, we're tired of worshiping an invisible God. What we really need as a people is we need a king. So they went to one of the prophets, Samuel, and they're like, Samuel, this is what we need you to do. We need you to name a king for us. We want a king to rule over us. We want to follow a king like all these other nations. That's what we would like to do. So with God's permission, the prophet Samuel anointed a king in a man named Saul. Now, Saul was the biggest and the greatest in all of Israel. He's described as tall, dark, and handsome. So God gave him a king. And for just a little while, for just a small amount of time, Saul was a good king. He did some good things, but it wasn't long. His true colors began to show, and the ineptness of his task of king really began to become apparent. Saul was arrogant. He was cowardly. He was susceptible to fits of rage. He was selfish. And he battled depression himself. He battled depression often, and that led to a lot of bad decisions and doing a lot of bad things. It became increasingly clear to the people of Israel that they were in a bad place themselves with a bad king, very little God, and to make matters worse, they were in constant conflict with one of their neighbors, the Philistines. So everybody with me? Everybody good? That's the climate. That's who David is. That's the climate of the world he's growing up in. And at 14 years old, I guarantee you, David saw this world. It looks bleak. It looks dangerous. It looks unsettled. He had his relationship with God. And I believe David understood the best place for me is out here with these sheep, playing my harp, hanging out in the outdoors, just hanging out over here with God and myself and these sheep. And that's what David did. And when you read 1 Samuel, what you will discover is even though some other things that happened we're going to get to a little later in this series, David he always made his way back to his father's fields, caring for the sheep. That's where he wanted to be. However, God had a different plan. Some time passes and we're told that 3 of David's brothers joined the army of Israel. They're fighting with King Saul against the Philistines, and they're engrossed in conflict at a place called the Valley of Elah. Now, the Valley of Elah is a mile-wide canyon. Everybody close your eyes real quick. All right, see a mile-wide canyon with a steep slope on one side, a steep slope on the other, Philistines on one side, Israel on the other. And what they were doing is they were kind of posturing is what it's called. They would come up, the Philistines would come to one side, Israelites would come to the other, and they would kind of stare each other down, waiting on the battle to begin. But they've been gone a while. No news of battle. No news of success or failure. And Jesse begins to worry about his sons. And Jesse is like, man, I need to find out what's going on. They've been gone for far too long. We haven't heard anything. I need to find out. So he's going to send somebody. Guess who he's going to send? That's exactly right. So he gets his youngest son David and he gives him 10 loaves of bread. Gives him some cheese and says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go find your brothers. When you go find your brothers, I want you to ask them, make sure they're okay. I want you to ask them how the battle is going. So David starts off early one morning. He has to travel 15 miles. That's the distance he was traveling from where he was to the Valley of Elah. And he travels there, and when he gets there, they're actually getting in battle formations. So that vision that I gave you just a second ago, the Philistines are getting on their steep hillside, headed down. The Israelites are getting on theirs, and David comes up, and he's like, oh man, the battle's about to begin. They're about to fight. And so David runs out. I think he thinks to himself, I want to get out there where I can see good, but he also wants to find his brothers. So he makes his way through the ranks and he finds his 3 brothers. And he begins to ask them, he says, "Hey guys, how's it going? Dad sent me here to check on you." And just as he is talking, he hears a howl. Howl! That woke you up, didn't it? You just sleep, you awake. That's what I imagine, at least. And he looks across the field, and the Philistines have made their way down in the valley, and out from them walks the largest man he's ever seen. Standing 9 foot 9 inches tall. 9 foot 9 inches tall. Make sure 9 foot 9 inches tall. It's a big fella. He's coated in armor. He has armor mail hanging off of him from his shoulders all the way past his knees. That alone, we're told in the Bible, weighs 150 pounds. That's right, 150 pounds. He has a spear as long as he is, as tall as him. The spear tip weighs 15 pounds. That's what we're told. 15 pounds. And he throws that thing. Has a bronze helmet on, bronze shin guards. He is a sight to behold. And in front of him, as if that's not bad enough, you know he's got some stud armor bearer. And the armor bearer is walking out in front of a shield bearer, and he is carrying a shield that's as tall as a man in front of him. What a sight. And this giant is not just walking out into the field. His name is Goliath, by the way. He's not just walking out into the field, just standing there. He's talking. He howls. I won't do it to you again. And he says something like this. "Good morning, you bunch of dogs." You bunch of Israelite weak trash. Is there anyone today? Is there anyone among you out of your cowardly rabble who's willing to face me? No army fights, just me and you, winner take all. Champion versus champion. He pauses, no reply. Then he says something like this. "You and your God are nothing." Where's this God of Israel I'm supposed to be scared of? He must be as weak and piddly as you. Goliath has done this for 40 days. Morning and evening, the Philistines and the Israelites gather in battle formations, and every day this giant would come out and taunt them. This was day 41. But there's a new one among the Israelite ranks. His name is David. And David's looking. He's looking at his brothers. And Goliath, what we're told in the Bible is Goliath every day, he made his way farther and farther across the field and scare them. As soon as the Israelites hear him, they turn and they begin to retreat back to their camp. David hears this and he sees this, and David is infuriated. He is enraged. David looks and he says, "This is not acceptable." I'm going to tell you some things that he thought. This is not acceptable. This isn't right. This should not be happening. What that giant's doing and what he's saying, that isn't right. That cannot stand. David's following his brothers as they retreat. And David begins to hear the men talking, and I don't know how exactly it goes, but maybe some of the men were just like, man, somebody's going to have to fight that giant. Somebody's going to have to fight that giant. Saul, promised that huge reward. So David begins to question, what are you guys talking about? What do you mean, why is nobody fighting him? What's going on? Why is nobody doing something about this guy? Says he begins to question all the soldiers, and as he began to question them, he says this, who is this pagan Philistine anyway, that he is allowed to defy the armies of the living God? So I want you to think, these soldiers that have been there 40 days, morning and evening, listen to this, and now all of a sudden David's here, this 14-year-old kid, this young upstart, and he's coming in there and he's going, what? Who is this guy that you would allow him to do that? Now I think that's a subtle correction, wouldn't you? David's kind of treading lightly. He's going, who is this? What do you mean? Nobody's going to fight this guy. But your brothers, your siblings always know you, right? Eliab hears David. Hears him over asking, and he gets mad. And he pulls his little brother aside, and he says, hey, listen. What are you even doing here? You just came here because you want to see the battle. You just came here because you want to see the fight happen. Questioned his motives. Said, hey, listen. Don't you have some sheep that you should go take care of and not be worried about this? David avoids the conflict with his brother, but he continues to inquire of the other soldiers. Wasn't long, King Saul heard. King Saul calls him into his tent. Now I want you to imagine this King Saul, tall, dark, handsome, big, awesome guy, awesome king, right? And here steps this 14-year-old boy into the tent. King Saul's like, this is the guy that's inquiring about this, is talking all that smack out there to my soldiers. I want you to look, because I want to tell you something. I believe the first principle that you must see in successful goal-chasing, life-changing, resolution-making, whatever you want to talk it, however you want to call it, the first principle, the first step is right here in what David says. He steps in front of the king and he speaks first, and this is what it says, verse 32. Don't worry about this Philistine, David told Saul. I'll go fight him. Did you hear it? Everybody stick with me. I know I'm about out of time. Did you see it? The first step? He said, I'll go fight him. Don't worry about the Philistine. I got him. No problem. You know what David realized? He realized it was his fight to make. David realized that it was his fight to make. I'm telling you, this is the first step. This is the first step in changing your life and changing anything and altering something that you've got, something that you see. David realized it was his fight to make. In order for David to reach that conclusion, I want you to see three things that he saw. The first is he saw this could not stand. When David looked out across that field and he heard what Goliath said, David said, this is not acceptable. This is not the way this is supposed to go. This cannot stand. This cannot go unnoticed, unaddressed. Not while I'm here. The second thing David realizes, this has gone on for far too long. Y'all been here 40 days listening to this? This has happened far too long. The third thing was this. David realized nobody else was going to do it. David walked around. He asked everybody, why is this happening? Who is this that we're allowing him to defy the living God? David looked these people in the eye. He looked all these other soldiers in the eye, and this is what he realized. Nobody is as insulted as I am. Nobody cares as much as I do. Do you hear me? David realized it was his fight to make. He viewed the situation, he viewed the giant, and he decided this is insufferable. This cannot continue on this way. And he couldn't let it go. And he realized he couldn't rely on another human to do it for him. That is the first thing I realized in my struggles. is it was my fight to make. Make sure you got that sentence right. It was my fight to make. When it came to my health, it was my fight to make. Me paying attention to my diet, pay attention to the things I was putting into my body, me figuring out my schedule and making room to go to the gym or exercise or to do something, that was my fight to make. When it came to my marriage, it was my fight to make. If I wanted my marriage to be as good as it could possibly be, if I wanted my marriage to be better, then it was up to me to pursue my wife. It was up to me to tell her how beautiful she was every single day. It was up to me to serve her the way that we just taught last year, to serve her and to be there for her. If I wanted my marriage to be as good as it was my fight to make. It's up to me. When it came to being a father, if I wanted to be the fun, energetic, steady, dependable dad, that was my fight to make. I had to figure out how to do that. How do I shirk off the stress? So when I pick up my youngins, they get dad, and they get the dad they deserve. That's my fight to make. Are y'all with me? Nobody else was going to fight for them. You hear me? Nobody else was going to fight for me to be the best dad to them that I could possibly be. Building a future for my family, that is my fight to make. Breaking bad habits or addictions that I have in my own life, that's my fight to make. I had to figure out how to do that. If it's a phone or if it's this or it's that, I have to figure out how do I fast this, how do I adjust this where this thing doesn't have a hold on me. That's my fight. And most importantly, when it became my relationship with God, if I wanted to really know Him and I wanted to really be close to Him and I wanted to really spend time with Him and I wanted to know that He's right here and I'm following Him, and for all these reasons, for all these other reasons that I'm trying to live, if I wanted to know that, that was my fight to make. I had to figure out, how do I pray? How do I make sure I have my quiet time? How do I make sure that I'm always putting Him first? How do I make sure that I am following Him every single step of the way? That was my fight to make. And the same will hold true for you. The first principle and goal setting, resolution making, and life-changing pursuit is this, is you have to understand that there's coming a point and it's your fight to make. It's up to you whether you do that or not. It's your decision to whether you walk in a tent or you sit down and you decide this is a fight worth making. This is not acceptable. This cannot continue on the way it has. This has gone on for far too long. Nobody else is going to do this. It's your fight to make. You know what I discovered? I discovered that when I made that decision, that it was a decision I had to make every day. I discovered that I had to wake up every single morning and I had to say, whew, I'll go fight Him. I'm going to pursue my wife. I'm going to love my kids. I'm going to focus on my relationship with God. I'm going to avoid the cheeseburger. All of it. Those were my giants. And I had to seize the day. And that's exactly what I want to help you do. But here's what you got to know. Understanding that it's your fight to make isn't enough. There's a lot more that goes into it. But I want you to look at your life. There's some fights on your horizon. There's some fights you're supposed to be making. And they're yours. They're your giants. They're your battles. And over the next few weeks, I'm going to try to help you discover how to fight them. Let me pray for you. Father, thank you so much for each and every person that's here. And this is my prayer. My prayer here is that you will reveal to us the battlefields we're supposed to be standing in. You will reveal to us the giants that we have looming in our lives. Maybe it is our relationship with you. Maybe we're supposed to be pursuing that more. And God, I know this, you're worth fighting for. You're worth fighting the busyness. You're worth fighting the temptations. You're worth fighting all the junk that tries to get in the way of getting to you. God, you're worth fighting all that stuff. Perhaps we're thinking about our marriages, we're thinking about being parents, or we're thinking about our finances, our lives, an addiction, a bad habit. This is my prayer. Help us identify the giants. Help us identify the fights we should be making. Help us realize that this is our choice, and it's our choice every single day, and God, help us seize the day. I pray for each and every person. I know there's people in here, man, they got serious fights in front of them. God, I pray that you just wrap your arms around them, and they feel your grace, and they feel your peace, and they walk into these battlefields knowing victory is at hand. But we'll get to that. Father, I love you, and I thank you for this church. Help them have a great week. Bless them, and above all, use them this week. Use them in the lives of the community. In Jesus' name, everybody says, amen. I hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you soon, okay? Bye-bye.